There's an old saying out there that says you should never go to bed angry. So instead of going to bed angry, I'm going to record a podcast. Let's get started. Hi, hello, and welcome in to the Ball Don't Lie podcast, episode number 185. My name is Austin Elmore. I am your host. Thank you for being here. Let me start off by apologizing for not putting out an episode last week. It was a crazy week. My work schedule was turned upside down, and I just wasn't able to make the time to record a podcast. But I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to have two episodes this week. We're going to do this one right now, which is what I promised: a look at the Bengals roster now that the dust has settled in this phase of player acquisition and going into the offseason. We're into the OTAs and that sort of portion now. And later on this week, a reaction to the Bengals 2026 schedule. We know one game already. I'll talk about that in just a second, but I want to start with what I teased at the beginning. I'm recording this episode. It is Tuesday night, May the 12th. It's 9:49 p.m. And the Reds just lost to the Washington Nationals. Four straight series openers that they've lost. They just had an 8-game losing streak not long ago. They've been outscored something like 25-4 in those series openers that they've lost now 4 in a row. They've given up double digits like 4 times in the last 6 games. I don't know what. I'm getting angry at the Reds. And I try not to do that because the Reds don't really try to win. I think they kind of tried to win this year more than they normally do. I don't trust anybody that is a part of baseball decision making with the Reds. I am overly disappointed each and every day with each passing day with Terry Francona, who I thought was legit a dude and could be the guy to save this team. Nick Krall, I don't have anything nice to say about Nick Krall. Not one single thing can I say nice about Nick Krall. Nothing. Nothing. So I can't say anything at all. And they're above 500, but I don't give a damn about that. Can you win championships? Can you compete for the National League Central? Can you be fun to watch? This team sucks right now. And I don't like losing. Nobody should. So I've decided, instead of getting up in the morning and recording the podcast on Wednesday morning like I normally do, I'm going to do it on Tuesday night. And hopefully a brain dump of all this stuff will help me to feel better and maybe help you feel better as well. Before I get into the Bengals, I have a recommendation to drop for you. I watched a documentary this week, a Netflix sports documentary from the Untold series. Now, these documentaries, they're not the best. They're not the most well-produced. They're not the best thing you've ever watched when it comes to sports documentaries, but you can learn some stuff about these various topics. And one I watched this week, or would have been last week now, was Untold: The Fall of Favre. It's the story about Brett Favre and everything that happened from when he was at the top of the mountain, really, as an NFL MVP quarterback and a Super Bowl champion with the Green Bay Packers, to how his career ended and the drama and the alleged criminal activity and the lawsuits and the all sorts of stuff that has followed Brett Favre since then. It gets into the Jen Sturger thing and him sending dick pics and cheating on his wife and all sorts of just terrible stuff about Brett Favre. And it was texting with a friend of mine who's a big Packers fan. You talk about how sometimes we put these athletes on pedestals, and you have a hard time swallowing the fact that they may not be a good person, or they might do something that is against what you believe or against your values, or do something that just simply is not at all what you stand for, what the organization stands for, or what so many people stand for. And it's hard to sometimes let go of that version while also holding on to the version of your youth or of your childhood of this person that brought you so many great memories and set forth a course of your life as a sports fan and helped you to fall in love with the game and all these different things. It's difficult to differentiate between those two. And I think the psychology behind that is interesting, because there's been a lot of players that I've liked and adored over the years that just haven't been that good of people, that haven't done all the right things and said all the right things. But yet I think there's a part of me as a child or as a kid or as a sports fan where, like, I'm going to hold on to that part of them that made me feel happy and that had a positive impact on my life, but I'm not going to hold on to, and I'm going to use the knowledge I've gained over the years and understanding of the different aspects of life that I've gained over the years, and I'm going to disavow that portion of this person's life, but I'm also not going to just completely throw away the good things that they did for a lot of people and the joy that they brought to a lot of people. Balancing those two things out is difficult. Um, but I think it was really obvious with Brett Favre, who was a really, really, really popular guy and did some really horrible things and is still dealing with that mess. I recommend it. It's called Untold: The Fall of Favre. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals. Last week I told you I would talk about the roster, and we are going to go through the roster, but that's a little bit secondary. The biggest news with the Bengals this week, well, they're going to Madrid, week 9 of the 2026 NFL season. The Bengals will go to Madrid, Spain, to play in the Bernabeu, which is the home of Real Madrid, seats 83,000 people, and they're going to play the Atlanta Falcons. Now, me personally, I'm just going to get up on my soapbox again here, okay? I don't like the international series. I don't like international series games. I would be cool if we never played another game outside the United States. I'm just not personally a fan of it. I am a little bit more open to it in the handful of games and events throughout the year. I don't like how many international games there are. I don't like how widespread the international games are. I just don't like it. And part of the reason, mainly the big reason I don't like it, is that there are so many taxpayer funded stadiums across the National Football League that money is coming out of my pocket and your pocket and pockets of people across this country to pay for stadiums. And each year, one of those games is being taken away from those fans who are paying for that stadium. I think that's wrong. And I think it's bullshit. And I think NFL owners ought to start buying their own and paying for their own stadiums. Now, some of them do, and good on them for doing so. But if you're going to keep taking your product elsewhere, then don't ask me to pay for your stadium. That drives me nuts. That is one of the, really drives me nuts. And on top of that, like I want to be able to experience the NFL in different cities and different moments. I don't always have the opportunity to go and travel to a game. Now, for example, this year I had been planning on and looking forward to for the last couple of years going to Atlanta to watch the Bengals play the Falcons. One of the reasons my mom lives just outside of Atlanta and would have been a great chance to go see her and parlay that into a Bengals game and blah, 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 blah. And just because the Bengals aren't playing there doesn't mean I can't go see her. I'm still going to go see her. But that's a good thing to do, and you experience another NFL city and an NFL stadium and the experience and the fans, and you get into the culture and you educate yourself. Like these are the things that are good. And it looks like an amazing stadium. A Super Bowl's been held there. Ohio State won a national championship in that building a couple of years ago. Like there's plenty of things to do and explore in the city of Atlanta. And I don't get to do that and see my favorite team play there because that game is being exported to Madrid, Spain. And there are NFL fans in Madrid, and good for them, and I'm happy for them, and I'm glad they get to experience that. I just don't think that the scale of international series play for the NFL, I just think it's too much. And eventually we're going to have one every single week. And I get it. And financially, I'm sure it's really good for the club. I'm sure it's really good for the league. I know that the players don't like it. I know that the coaches don't like it. I know that the football people don't like it. And so that in and of itself is enough for me to say no, but I'm sure it makes a lot of money. We'll get into more of this when I talk about the schedule. I have a fear, I have a worry when it comes to the NFL about a couple of these things. We'll talk about that later this week when we get the schedule reaction video. So the Bengals are going to Madrid. They'll play the Falcons. That's going to be week 9. Now, if there's a good thing about this, it means that week 10 more than likely is going to be a bye week. And week 10 is just about the perfect time to have a bye week as far as I'm concerned. Now, it's not guaranteed that the Bengals are going to have a bye week after that game, but it's more likely than not that they will. That's a good thing. Week 10 is usually a perfect time to get a bye week. Now, last year it was rumored that the Bengals could play the Dolphins in Madrid. Madrid hosted the Dolphins and maybe the Commanders, was it last year? I can't remember if Washington went over there or not. Either way, um, and Joe Burrow advocated like, hey, I want to go over there. I want to play there. Jamar Chase is like, yeah, I would love to play there. Like, those guys say that now. I'm sure in the middle of November and you're fighting for your life might not necessarily be the way that they feel and all the pomp and circumstance that comes with that. We'll see, but this is something that they've expressed interest in wanting to do in the past. So maybe it'll be a good thing. It's never a bad thing to be on the national stage, and I'm sure the Bengals have multiple primetime games this year. They're going to be a 9:30 a.m. kickoff. It's going to be on NFL Network for the TV portion of things. It's never a bad thing to be the center of the NFL universe, and that's what it is. I mean, the NFL does a ton and puts a ton of time and effort and energy into this and promoting your brand and promoting your product, and that's good. I just don't know if it's always a good thing for the actual football, and that's what concerns me. Speaking of the actual football, let's talk about this Bengals roster. Let's start with really the roster, the part of the roster that's changed the least, and that's the offense. The Bengals are going to be returning 11 starters on offense this year. The re-signing of Dalton Reisner, they still have Andre Yosevich, Samaje P. Ryan is still here, Chase Brown is still here, Mike Gesicki is still here, all those guys. Let's quickly look through all the position groups. Right now on the roster, there's four quarterbacks: Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco, Josh Johnson, and Sean Clifford. By the time the season rolls around, it'll be Joe Burrow and Joe Flacco, and maybe one of those guys on the practice squad. I would assume it's going to be Sean Clifford on the practice squad. Josh Johnson might get a chance to go somewhere else. We'll see. Running back room, it's Chase Brown, Samaje P. Ryan, and Taj Brooks. Those guys are more than likely going to be on the roster by the time the season rolls around. There's a couple of other guys, Gary Brightwell. They had a couple of college free agent signings, Kentrell Bullock and Jamal Haynes. Those guys are fighting for the bottom of the roster spots, practice squad spots, potentially special team spots. Wide receiver room is Chase, Higgins, Yoshivas, Tinsley, the rookie wide receiver Colby Young out of Georgia, who's been pretty impressive through rookie minicamp up until this point, has said and done all the right things and looks physically exactly what you want out of that position. They also have Charlie Jones and Keyshawn Williams, who I think is going to be a training camp battle this year. Those two guys competing in the return game, especially, is going to be a big thing to watch. Now, Charlie Jones has been really good. He's returned to kickoff each of the last 2 years for a touchdown. He's taken a punt to the house. Like, that's part of the reason why the Bengals drafted him. The issue with Charlie is he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. If Keyshawn Williams can push him a little bit and be effective on special teams, I think that's a potential battle to watch there. Other wide receivers, these are bottom of the roster guys. They're going to be fighting for spots: Dante Myers, Jordan Moore, Xavier Johnson, Kendrick Pryor, and another college free agent signing, Noah Thomas. Let's go to the tight end room. You've got Mike Gesicki. He's going to be the starter. You can kind of count him in as the wide receivers just based off the way the Bengals use him. You've got Drew Sample, who is their little bit of everything back and tight end and sniffer and all these different things that he does, but he really doesn't bring much to you on offense. You've got the rookie they drafted, Jack Indries, is in that room, as is Eric All, who's coming off of another knee injury. Eric All is going to be good to go by the time training camp rolls around. Bottom of that room, fighting for a spot, is going to be Tanner Hudson, who Joe Burrow likes quite a bit, Cam Grandy, and a college free agent signing, Josh Caddis, who is a Cincinnati native and played at the University of Kentucky. Onto the offensive line, your starters are going to be Orlando Brown Jr., Dylan Fairchild, Ted Karras, Dalton Reisner, and Amarius Mims. Backing them up, the swing tackle right now is probably going to be Cody Ford. And that makes me a little bit nervous because Cody, when he was in that position last year, did not perform well when he had to go in if Mims or Orlando Brown Jr. was banged up. He did not play well when he was in that position. The other thing about Cody Ford that's interesting is the Bengals got him to take a pay cut to stick around this year. So I think for that reason alone, he's going to be on this roster. One of the guys they drafted, Brian Parker out of Duke, was Brian Parker the Duke player? Yeah, Brian Parker went to Duke. Talked about this on the last episode. I think he's going to be somebody who is going to work at all five positions and could be a potential swing tackle as well. Behind Ted Karras, you've got Connor Liu, you've got Jalen Rivers. I think that's the group that makes the opening day roster as of now. Some of the other guys, college free agent signings, tackles, Corey Robinson, Christian Jones, guard Liam Brown, another backup center, and Jacob Bear. And you've also got Andrew Coker, who's kind of been hanging around the roster for the last couple of years. Offense is pretty set in stone, to be completely honest. Not a lot of changes, not a lot of guys that are new to the program. Not a lot of guys that are going to stray from the norm as far as I'm concerned. Now, defense is where it gets interesting. Now, we know that they have completely replenished that defensive line, and that room is deep. Let's start with the edge rushers. You've got Miles Murphy, Boye Mafe, Shamar Stewart, Cassius Howe, Cedric Johnson. You've got Isaiah Foskey, who's a part of this conversation as well. I think it's going to be Murphy, Mafe, Stewart, Howe, and Cedric Johnson probably as the guys who make the team right away in that rotation of pass rushers off the edge. Speaking of Miles Murphy, the Bengals did not pick up his fifth-year option for about $14.75 million. The Bengals and Duke Tobin said it was strictly a financial decision and that they want Miles Murphy to be here long term. I don't think that they are presently negotiating a contract extension. I don't think it would be smart for Miles Murphy to do that. I don't know that it would necessarily be smart for the Bengals to do that. But neither side is probably interested in talking right now about an extension, but there is mutual interest in seeing where things stand at the end of this year. The Bengals have told Miles Murphy and they've told the media them not picking up his fifth-year option for next year at $14.75 million was strictly financial because of the amount of money they've spent this offseason and going up to the cap. I don't think it's a great excuse because they could free up that money relatively easily with some restructures, but the Bengals have decided they want to give Miles Murphy another year, and they're going to try to get a contract extension done with him at some point. So some of the guys that probably aren't going to be on the team as far as the defensive line is concerned, Isaiah Foskey, I don't see him making the team. If you go into the interior, you've got B.J. Hill and Jonathan Allen and Landon Robinson, who's the rookie out of Navy. At the nose tackle position, you've got Dexter Lawrence and T.J. Slayton. I think those guys are obviously shoe-ins to be on this roster. And, there's a couple names on there like McKinley Jackson, who's the third string nose tackle at the moment. You've got Chris Jenkins, you've got Howard Cross, you've got Jordan Jefferson. I think Chris Jenkins could be one of those guys, a former second-round pick out of Michigan for the Bengals a couple of years ago. That's now a position of strength for them with all those players in that room. And Chris Jenkins really hasn't developed the way that the Bengals wanted him or needed him to develop. That could be the type of player that you flip in a trade in training camp and maybe get one of those linebackers or get one of those nickel corners that you're going to be looking for. Keep an eye out as a potential trade as a guy like Chris Jenkins. Let's go over to the linebackers. This is the room that's been touched the least. It's still Barrett Carter. It's still Demetrius Knight Jr. The guys backing them up, Joe Giles Harris and Oren Burks. Oren Burks was pretty bad last year. Actually, all those guys were bad last year. Joe Giles Harris was okay and played pretty well when he played on special teams. And I think that's going to be his ticket to making this roster this year. Behind them, you've got Liam Anderson, Shaka Hayward, Antoine Powell-Ryland. They made a claim from the New York Giants and picked up Swayze Bozeman, the former Southern Miss Golden Eagle product. And they also signed two college free agents, Eric Gentry from USC and Jack Dingle from Cincinnati. Those guys are going to be fighting to make the team, probably going to have to be special teamers. That room is the one where you expect there to be some sort of addition between now and the start of the season. I don't know how you go into the season with that room basically unchanged, untouched, and consider yourself serious about trying to get better on defense. Bobby Wagner is out there. Bobby Okereke is out there. Other linebackers are out there. Maybe in training camp we see a Noah Fant, Dalton Reisner type signing where you get a player for 1 year, $8 million, $7 million, and you plug them into that room, and that helps those linebackers. I hope that's the case because I don't have faith in that room right now. I also don't have faith in the depth of the cornerback room. If you look at that position, you've got DJ Turner, Dax Hill. You feel good about those two guys on the outside. By the way, Dax Hill said, I don't want to play inside. I don't want to be a slot corner. Now, the reason that's being brought up is because the Bengals drafted Tacario Davis, who is pretty much only going to be an outside corner. That's just the body type that he has. He doesn't really translate. His skill set doesn't really translate into a nickel corner, slot corner type of position. And so the Bengals feel like the versatility and the athleticism of Dax Hill better suits him on the inside and is a piece that they can move around. Dax Hill finally feels comfortable on the outside, finally feels confident on the outside, and also knows it's a contract year for him. He's got an opportunity to go make some money being an outside corner. Dax has said to the media, it's better for my mental health, it's better for my confidence, it's better for my game. I want to be outside. We'll see if he sticks outside because right now your starting nickel corner is Jalen Davis. And hand up, I'm a Jalen Davis apologist. I really like Jalen Davis. That dude played good for the Bengals last year. He's one of those guys that was on the Super Bowl 56 team that's still here and has carved out a nice little career for himself. But I don't know if I fully trust Jalen Davis. Behind him, the other nickel is going to be Jasir Taylor. I don't know if I trust him either. You've got Josh Newton and DJ Ivy, who are unproven commodities, although I think Ivy played better towards the end of last season. You got Braylon Lux, you've got Jalen Kimber, you've also got Sierra Wright, which was a college free agent signing. As far as the safety room is concerned, your starters are set. Jordan Battle and Brian Cook. Brian Cook, of course, the big acquisition from the Kansas City Chiefs. Behind them, you've got Kyle Duggar, who I think is going to play a lot for this team. I think you could see Kyle Duggar come down and play a little bit in the slot. I think you could see him come down and play a little bit of linebacker. His positional versatility is why the Bengals went out and signed him. They've also got PJ Jules, who I think is going to be a big part of this team from a special team standpoint, stepping into the role that Tyson Anderson vacated when he left for the Denver Broncos. We've also got Dejon Anthony in that room. Russ Yeast is in that room, and a college free agent by the name of Isaiah Wokobia. I think I'm saying his name right. Those are guys that are going to be battling for the final positions on the roster. And the special teams, you got Evan McPherson, you've got William Wagner, the long snapper, and Ryan Rico, the punter. Those guys are pretty much set in stone. Wouldn't be surprised if a camp body is signed for one of those positions just to have somebody else to kick and punt every day at practice. I look at this roster, and my biggest concerns are offensive line depth, linebacker, and cornerback depth. That's a pretty good spot to be in considering where they were at a year ago at this time and where they were at during the NFL season last year. This is a Super Bowl caliber roster, in my opinion. When you consider the schedule that the Bengals are going to play, the teams that are in their division, Joe Burrow being fully healthy, how good the offensive line has been, I look at all of this and say, this is a team that can get to the Super Bowl. And I firmly believe that. But there are weaknesses, and you worry about those weaknesses cropping up against really good teams. Good teams, good offenses are going to attack your weaknesses. And if your weaknesses are linebackers and nickel corners, well, then guess what? They're going to attack your linebackers and your nickel corners. You better have a plan for that. And if you don't, you better fix that position between now and the start of the NFL season. I'm fascinated to see if the Bengals decide to do anything else because multiple times they've cited, even in the Miles Murphy situation, that they've spent a lot of money and they've spent up to the cap and that they're fully basically vested in where they're at and don't expect anything to change. And I think it's a bit of an excuse based off the structure of some of the contracts, but they haven't left themselves a ton of flexibility right now, which means I don't know if we're going to see that unless there's a restructure of the contract to Joe Burrow, which is very possible. Speaking of Joe Burrow, one of the dumbest things I've ever heard is that Joe Burrow should be at the Bengals voluntary workouts and that it's a whole big thing about him not being there and it's not good for him. He's not a good teammate and blah, 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 blah. We'll talk about this more maybe on the next episode because I'm almost out of time, but there is no dumber argument than people who think Joe Burrow should be at voluntary workouts and him not being there is a negative impact on the team. It's just not true. In any of the off seasons that Joe Burrow has not been rehabbing an injury in Cincinnati, he hasn't gotten here until middle to late May and hasn't talked until middle to late May, and that hasn't changed. He's been out west and he's worked out with Jordan Palmer and worked out with the Bosa brothers, and he's hung out in Los Angeles. He's gone to the Fanatics White Party. He's gone to the Met Gala. He's gone to all these different things. None of this is new. But people think because of that one bad press conference last year and because of all the different moves that the Bengals have made that all of a sudden Joe is going to start acting differently. No, this is the expectation, right? Like the expectation is that you build the roster in a way that it's good enough to win the Super Bowl. And just because you finally do it doesn't mean Joe's going to act any different. He's been good and ready to go every single time. Joe's never had a bad NFL season. It's not like he's been unprepared at any point. Has he had some slow starts? Absolutely he has. But I don't think running and lifting weights for a couple of weeks in May negatively impacts the way he starts a season in September. I just don't. And I think that is a dumb talking point that is completely made up. And Joe and the Bengals are in a really good place right now. And anybody who tells you otherwise does not know what they're talking about. Period. End of story. All right, that does it for this episode of the Balls Don't Lie podcast. Coming up later this week, hopefully Friday morning, we'll have another podcast released reacting to the Bengals 2026 NFL schedule. Speaking of which, you can hear me live from 10 p.m. until midnight at Dickman's Sports Barn in Kentucky alongside Chick Ludwig for the Orange and Black schedule breakdown. That's going to be on 700 WLW. You can listen live on the iHeartRadio app. We're going to do 6 full hours of schedule coverage from 6 to 8. It'll be Lance McAllister and former NFL linebacker Rocky Boyman. From 8 to 10, it'll be Mo Egger and former NFL quarterback Tony Pike. And from 10 to midnight, myself and Chick Ludwig. I invite you to join us. I also invite you to listen to Cincy 360 each and every day from noon to 3 on ESPN 1530. Listen on the iHeartRadio app. And as always, if you don't already, follow me on any and all social media at Auty Elmore. It's AUTYELMORE. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. We'll talk to you again in a couple of days. In the meantime, have fun, be safe, go Bucks.